And welcome into the Week 4 roster show. I'm your host, Ian Power, joined as always by Matt Vitale, Frankie Santiago, and newly this week, as we're shifting around our programming a little bit, we have Mike Fontaine from TrashTalk Sports joining us on the podcast tonight. Before we dive into the news and everything, Mike, do you want to tell the audience a little bit about where you're coming from?
Sure thing. Appreciate you guys having me on, and really excited to talk fantasy sports with you guys. If you haven't seen our show, we do this once a week on each show where we have one of you guys come on our show. We talk about the starts and sits of each week prior to the games on Sunday mornings. And then, I come here and give you guys the insight that we have as well. So you can find us at youtube.com/TrashTalkSports. Pretty simple. And we hope to see you guys over there.
And if you can't remember that and you want to have to find where it is in the video, you can also look down in the description. We'll have all of Mike's channel's info down there, as well as our info, which, as always, if you guys aren't following us yet, make sure to hit that subscribe button, ring the notification bell, follow us on social media at the Fantasy 4-Pack, at Trash Talk, was it _media?
Yep.
At Trash Talk _media, and then personally at fantasy 4p _Ian, at Senpai Koala, and at the Foon. That's FPOON. A little bit of news before we dive into the programming itself. Josh Jacobs missed this week with an ankle. He is hopeful he'll be able to practice at some point this week. Probably still not rolling him out there, given the question marks surrounding this player, surrounding their run game as a whole, and the fact that they're the Monday night game. I'm probably shying away from Josh Jacobs, even if he is questionable going into the weekend, because there aren't really any good pivots on that team. Are you guys in kind of the same boat as me?
Yeah. I will have to see, just because there's such a lack of running back. You might need him, but so if he's looking healthy going into it, and all signs are pointing towards
what if they say going into the Sunday games he's a game time decision?
Going into the Sunday games, if he's game time decision, I pivot.
Okay. Darrell Henderson, ribs, making progress. Hopefully going to be available for week 4. T. Higgins with a shoulder was a DNP in what was an estimated practice today, so they weren't actually out in the field, but if they were, he wouldn't have been out there. Elijah Moore suffered a concussion in week 3. He will be in the concussion protocol this week. Don't really think it matters whether he passes or not for fantasy, because at this moment he's just kind of a wait and see, but definitely something to keep in mind. Maybe put him onto your IR if you have IR slots, so you can go grab someone else. Justin Fields underwent x-rays on his throwing hand after the game, which came back negative. Not sure if that's just to, see if there's something wrong. He's like, I don't know, maybe it's broken. I got to swap it out for a new one. But that was a yikes game by Justin Fields and the Matt Nagy offense.
Yeah, that was pretty rough.
A.J. Brown with a hamstring pull this past week. He is currently considered week to week with that. We're going to talk about him a little bit later in the show, but he is definitely someone to monitor as the week goes on. A little bit of feel-good news here. Josh Gordon, who has officially been reinstated, is signing with the Kansas City Chiefs. If there's any team that can make Josh Gordon into anything sort of what he used to be, I think it's the Chiefs, because they at least throw enough for him to maybe catch a ball or two and take it to the house.
Yeah, he'll be catching those 1-yard passes on the goal line.
He's their new running back. James White with a hip is out indefinitely with a hip subluxation. So the same injury that Tua had in college and Fitzpatrick had earlier this year. Vitale, weren't you saying that you were watching or reading a report from some doctors who were saying that depending on what bone's broken the hip, this could be career-ending for him?
Yeah, they were talking about if this is a fracture more to the head, where the actual bone fits into your hip, or the actual cup that the
the ball and socket.
Yeah, the ball in the socket, basically. If there's any fractures in there, they were saying that's a pretty ugly injury that could easily end his career, with the fact that he's later in its career.
Sure, makes sense.
But with the subluxation, this should be a little bit recoverable, but he's most likely done for the season, and that alone could be career-ending for him.
Yes. Little bump for Damian Harris and the rest of the running backs in that offense, though. I know they coming off a bad game where the Patriots couldn't get much done, but James White was their pass catching specialist, so
Yeah.
That's more passes to go to the running backs or the tight end position. So keep an eye on how that shakes out. Juju Smith-Schuster had a rib injury this past week, was diagnosed with bruised ribs, is currently considered day-to-day. I don't really expect this to affect his availability for the game, but it may affect how he plays in-game. So that's just another black mark on this Steelers offense that I think we're all just trying to get off of as quickly as possible. Christian McCaffrey, who had that nasty hamstring injury on Thursday, will not be placed on IR for now. Matt Rule says he is hopeful that Christian McCaffrey will be able to return sooner than 3 weeks. So I want to get all three of you's opinions on this, because to me, this reads like it's probably a 3 to 4 week injury, and they're hoping Christian can respond well to treatment and get back on the field sooner than that time. But at the same time, I'm not going to be surprised if he does miss 3 to 4 weeks. Are you guys all in the same camp, or do you think this is just, good news out of Panthers camp and Christian's going to be back in that 2 week period?
So for me, at least, the way I look at it, I don't like seeing this right after an injury-plagued season that he had last year. And he clearly was struggling to come back that year. They were trying to force it a little bit, it seemed, but at the end of the day, he just wasn't able to go. But in the limited fashion he was great. So it's kind of one of those things where he can make it out there, but it doesn't seem like he has the longevity to stay there. So I honestly, I think this one's going to be 4 weeks. That's how I feel.
I would say I want him to come back on the later end of the timetable.
Sure.
Just because, kind of like he touched on, we saw him try and come back last year as quick as he could. And while he was great while he was out there, then he immediately was just out again. And I don't know if this is...
I'd be shocked if he doesn't get a workload reduction after all of these, all of these minor injuries that are just kind of stacking up at this point.
What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I have two thoughts here. Obviously, with hamstrings and running backs, you want to be as cautious as humanly possible, because when you have a guy like Christian McCaffrey, who is essentially the lifeblood of your offense, you want to make sure that you're tending to his needs, and a hamstring is not something to mess with because that can linger on for the entire season. Now, Matt Rule has shown a tendency to favor holding a player out due to injury for an extended period of time, even after they're healthy, just to absolutely make sure. And, we were hearing reports coming out of Carolina last year that Christian could have come back earlier, but he was held out by Matt Rule because of that fact. And Matt Rule said, essentially, I wanted to make sure that Christian was fully healthy, and then he ended up getting hurt again. So he almost doubled down on that fact, saying we're going to take it slow, and kind of evaluate as this progresses. So I'll be interested to see how that all plays out. But I think that this is going to be possibly a 3 to 4 week injury. I honestly think it could go a little bit longer.
Yeah, I can see what you mean. I mean, you're a new head coach in the league, and your star's out. I mean, you don't want to just push him back out there and be the guy that ruined CMC's career, or even just ruined a few years on his even in his career if he's able to come back from these, and that could just cost you your job. So at least he's showing some intelligence, some foresight with this one to handle his stars the way you should.
KJ Hamler with a knee. Unfortunately, he went down in a nasty hit this past week. Got his knee, like you saw in the hit. It was like his knee just got so twisted up. It's like, oh yep, yeah, he's gone. As kind of expected around time from the around from when that hit happened. It is confirmed a torn ACL, so KJ Hamler is done for the season. I don't think this necessarily, because no one had super high hopes for KJ Hamler as far as fantasy goes. But if you are betting on other options in that Broncos offense, the pass catchers keep going down. So this is going to mean more targets for Sutton, more targets for Fant, and when Judy comes back, more of a role in the offense for him. So I think there's a silver lining to this. Hopefully KJ Hamler gets healthy and comes back for next year, though, because he's fun to watch when he's healthy. And then Devontae Adams in what looked like it was a super concussion. Apparently, he came back onto the field very quickly after that. Like the medical staff were just like, "You're fine, get out of here." Went back on the field, said after the game that it was just a big hit to the chest, and he was just lying on the field because he had the wind knocked out of him and was not, in fact, unconscious. I'm a little sus on this, but if Adams is saying it's not a concussion and the league's not investigating it, then fine. It was a chest injury, and Davante Adams is good to go.
I mean, Davante did say he is built different.
Yes.
That's why he could come back.
Yes. Davante's chest is located on his forehead.
I hope his brain is built different too, because that was a nasty hit that he took.
He drinks that Tom Brady concussion water, you know?
Yep.
And then Tyler Lockett avoided major injury this past week. He went down in a tangle, rolled over, grabbing his knee, was down for a bit. Everyone kind of, I think, expected the worst seeing that. But Pete Carroll said after the game it was an unusual situation. He got twisted, and because he felt his knee get twisted, he just wanted to make sure he was okay. But he did come back into that game. They're saying it's from what I can see, a mild MCL sprain now. So he is currently, as far as I can tell, not expected to miss time. If he does, it's probably just going to be a game or two. All the same, I think that now is a good time to go try and grab Lockett or Metcalf if the Metcalf manager is still available, because this is likely going to at least mean a reduction of workload for Lockett for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
MCL sprains are tough to overcome in an industry where you need your knees. That'll do it for the news as far as I could see. Was there any tidbits that you guys want to bring up that I didn't have written down on my list here?
Nope, that's all the major stuff. I mean, the Lockett thing for me, I thought was kind of ironic, seeing as we've been on team get rid of Tyler Lockett while you can, and now you probably can't get rid of Tyler Lockett.
I think you still can, but after this last week, his value is definitely reduced.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot harder.
He is no longer at his ceiling.
Yeah, some people will just look at the questionable tag and be like,
Yeah.
oh, he's good to go. He's fine.
Mike, any news that I didn't mention that you feel warrants mentioning?
No, I think you hit on all the points. A lot of players going down with some injuries, and you gotta stick with it and just follow the news as much as you can. So I think you guys hit on all the good points here.
Okay, so we're mixing up how we do for the meat and potatoes of the show. If you've been with us for a little bit, we were playing with a different format at the start of the year. We're mixing that up a little bit again this week. So bear with us while we sort of go through the altered way that we're doing this. We're now just going to do 2 buy lows and 2 sell highs. So I have the list here in front of me. I'm going to sort of set the stage for you three, and then we'll go around the horn, let you guys discuss whether you agree they are a good buy low, or whether this is just a they're underperforming because they're in a bad situation, or you expect this to continue for them. And then same for the sell highs. Sound good, guys?
Sounds
Everyone
good.
understand the exercise?
Yep.
All right. First on our list for buy lows is Mr. A.J. Brown himself. They obviously acquired Julio in the offseason. They've been a run-first offense for some time now. Really leaning on Derrick Henry and that play action to set up the big shots downfield, and that's been how the Titans have operated. So far this year, it's looked almost honestly like Julio Jones is their number one, not A.J. Brown. Now add on top of that, he's dealing with a hamstring injury. His value is you can get him below market right now. A.J. Brown managers are probably similar to Calvin Ridley managers, 1-2, 0-3, because they spent a second-round pick on a guy who hasn't done anything for them. Are you guys agreeing that A.J. Brown is a primed buy low candidate right now, or do you think this is just signs of things to come and you should let him stay on whoever's team he is?
So to start with this one, I do like the value of him right now. The only thing is the downside, he's hurt right now. So if you are in a driver's seat in your league right now and you're 3-0 going into week 4, I think he's a great buy for you, because if he misses another week, you can weather a loss if the trade ends up causing you one.
Sure.
But if you're on the lower side, I might give him a week just to see if that manager gets a little more desperate. Because yes, Julio Jones he's just so talented that he doesn't really need a lot. As we're seeing, he doesn't really need a lot to get going, and he can just use talent to kind of mesh with a new offense. But I think we're going to see what we've been seeing with Julio Jones. I think injuries are not too far away for him. I would not be surprised if at the end of the season we're seeing basically this situation but flip-flop with A.J. Brown being their clear one and Julio in and out with thigh injuries and foot injuries and all those other things. But, yeah, this is a great time. If you've got the depth to weather a trade and if that manager's panicking like 0-3, strike now.
Okay, Vitale's a buy. Frankie?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. Again, like you said with Calvin Ridley and A.J. Brown, they're kind of in very similar situations. And if you're one of those people who went, high running back and, went wide receiver diving in the middle rounds and the late rounds, you probably could have got a guy like Rondell Moore. I mean, granted, he had a terrible game this week, but he's looked good with the offense. Mike Williams in the 8th.
And honestly, Rondell Moore fumbled early in this game. This might have just been a Cliff Kingsbury sitting the rook to let him know that fumbling's not okay,
then,
sort of thing.
I mean, those are just two guys, but there's plenty of other guys out there who have been having these good games.
Sure.
And people might just see those totals and think, well, yeah, these guys are parts of their offense now, but there's a lot of injuries out there. And, I mean, we're talking about a guy who's currently injured. They might be thinking, okay, well, if they're in the 0-3 hole or even the 1-2 hole, look, I need these points now. I want a guy who's performing now. I can't wait on A.J. Brown. So you can be like, look, I have, if you might even be able to get a 1-for-1 with a, what we would consider like a wide receiver 2 in general, not just how they're performing right now. And for me, I think that's kind of where A.J. Brown's price goes. He definitely knocks him down. I think his ceiling is at end of the year, top 10 wide receiver because he's super talented. He's probably going to come back. I would say if it's week to week, hamstrings, we'll say weeks 6 or 7, if he at the latest, assuming this isn't super serious and there's not telling us. I mean, if I have the wide receiver depth, I'll take him at the end of the year. I mean, he's got a pretty good schedule. I think barring New England, all of those are pretty cake matchups. I'll stash him if I have to.
So you're a buy for A.J. Brown?
I am a buy for A.J. Brown.
All right. Mike, what about you?
I'm a buy with A.J. Brown as well. I guess the biggest question for me is making sure that the seller is not trying to hold on to them just because they were a second round pick. That's what I seem to find when you're trying to trade for these guys. But nonetheless, if A.J. Brown's available and you have a package that'll help that team out, absolutely go get him because you guys said it. Julio Jones, he's been hurt each of the last 3 seasons, especially toward the end of the season. A.J. Brown is going to be in the position that Julio's in right now later on when these teams are looking at the playoffs and the end of their season. So I would definitely look at A.J. Brown as a buy low candidate. And I would almost say outside of your obvious running back 1s and 2s and even wide receiver 1s, I would put anything on the table to try to get this guy.
Okay.
All right.
So 3 buys for A.J. Brown. Let's see if we mix it up a little bit with this next guy here. David Montgomery, running back for the Chicago Bears. Obviously had a hot start to the season, only to have 2 fairly down weeks in a row here as this Bears offense looks like the wheels are coming off the wagon, and the wheels were very loosely attached to begin with. Whether it's Andy Dalton out there just unable to get anything done, or Matt Nagy and this O-line not giving Fields any space to operate, not calling any RPOs or running plays for the rookie, or just the fact that Fields himself looked like he was a rookie on a bad team. I think he had 46 total yards of offense this past week. Where are you guys at on David Montgomery? I mean, he is a running back who, on one hand, only show in town. He's going to be getting the lion's share of the volume, but the volume might not be worth it on this Bears team as they seem to be circling the drain right now.
So for me, honestly, he's going to be a don't touch just because his value is depressed, but I don't think it's depressed to the point where I want to buy in on this Bears offense because it just looks, at best, it is looking mediocre. And at worst, it's looking like a kicker can, produce more yards than they can. So
Hey, not just any kicker, Justin Tucker.
Yeah. So when I look at buying into this one, he's a third round, maybe high fourth round if your league was cool on him. So they're looking at him with that value. Running back's already weak, so you have to pay a little bit more for a running back, especially when he's going to get the carries. And that's exactly how I'd be selling him to somebody. He's like, listen, they're figuring out the new quarterback. He still gets all the touches. He was a high value guy for a reason. Look at what he did at the end of last year. Like I'm trying to shine this guy up and get him off my team just because it's one of those things where we are 3 weeks in. We understand the situation a little bit better with a lot of these teams, how they're looking, how they're using their personnel. So the use is there, but I feel like just as a whole, this team cannot stay on the field, and they're entirely reliant on their defense to do. Like this almost feels like the Saints last year, where the Saints needed those short yardage fields to get anything done, and Kamara was able to feast off those. But Kamara is just a far more dynamic back, so he can score off of like a random just screen pass, whereas David Montgomery in these plays are just...
He's a grinder.
He's a grinder. He needs 20 carries. He needs an offense that can kind of like extend the drive so he can get to the goal line to punch one in. I just don't see a lot of points being scored by this Bears offense. And I'm trying to remove myself of it completely.
Mike, what about you?
Look, I'm going to stay away from David Montgomery. I was high on him for a while, but what I've seen in the NFL is that mobile quarterbacks tend to screw over running backs in the sense that, they can do a lot of what the running backs do without having to give up the football. And David Montgomery is just one of those guys that he's going to lose carries to Justin Fields. He's going to lose carries because the Bears are going to be playing from behind. That there's a lot working against Montgomery, and I'm not really looking forward to going after him at all right now.
Totally fair. Frankie, are you going to break up the trend here, or are we going to have 3 sells on this one?
For me, it's price dependent. It's kind of, we know how much I love Najee, and this situation reminds me a lot of Najee for all the points that you mentioned. He's in a struggling offense very clearly.
Yep.
And he's going to get the volume, but unless I can get him like really cheap as like my running back 3, I'm actually probably out on him. I initially thought going into this I was going to be, he's shown that he can be the guy before, but I feel like this Bears offense, there's just something that's just not clicking at all.
Sure.
And until they figure it out, it's kind of...
I think there's something is Matt Nagy, but yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm unless you can get him super cheap, I'm probably out on him.
Okay. So far we've had 3 buys and then 3 sells. Let's see if the mind meld continues for our 2 sell high candidates. First up is Mr. Mike Williams, perennial, has a couple big games and then gets hurt and leaves for the season candidate. So far he's been on a tear to start this year like we've never seen before. Like he's been not even hyperbole, just the Chargers wide receiver 1. He's been making big catches all over the field. He's been getting hyper targeted. And he's been turning in extremely valuable for fantasy managers. If Mike Williams, didn't have Cooper Kupp just lighting the league on fire, he would currently be the wide receiver 1 on the season in half point and full point PPR formats. So,
can I start off with this one?
Oh, actually, I was going to kick it to you first on this one, as seeing as you are, I believe you have more shares of Mike Williams than anyone at this table. So,
yeah.
But with Mike Williams, are we believing the hype? Is this finally the breakout season that we've been told, that's been foretold that was coming for years, or is this going to be, Mike Williams is just setting you up to break your heart, and he's gonna tear an ACL or fracture a shin or something in a couple weeks because he goes up for a 17-foot catch and comes back down like a meteor?
Oddly enough, it looks like it's Keenan Allen that's making those catches lately, but no, I probably do have the most shares of Mike Williams at this table because he was the guy I was hyper targeting in drafts for the reason that we saw it, last year when he was healthy. We saw what Herbert could be.
Yep.
And this is the best quarterback he's ever had in his career. He's in an offense that has a good running back and, a nice defense. I'm not going to call them world beater. But he's getting a lot of opportunities because he's playing as the 2 to Keenan Allen. And I mean, he is showing out as the one because of the type of player that he is. He is the end zone guy. He's a big body. He's a guy who's going to go up and get the jump ball every time. And, I mean, you probably drafted him in the 7th or 8th round. That means that you probably have more wide receiver depth. You might be a guy who has, Devontae Adams, like Jamar Chase, other people. And you might have the wide receiver wealth to shop him around. I mean, even if you're not going to, sell him right away. I mean, I think he's probably going to have another big game next week. Shop him around, see what you can get, throw him on your trade block. See what people offer you for him. Because you might be able to just swap this guy for like an A.J. Brown or a Calvin Ridley. And granted, if you have that wide receiver depth, you might not need those points now.
Yeah. Vitale?
So this is an interesting one for me because just from looking, like before we started the show, I was sell high. As we moved to this segment, I started actually saying he's a hold, keep him on a team, or even if you can somehow snake him off somebody, get him. But honestly, I swayed back to selling him high. I went and looked at the stats.
You really buried the. I thought you were like, but now I'm a keep. Like,
no. So I am on team sell high. The big reason is this: we know he's injury prone. Keenan Allen is still there, and on top of that, he's had this is his 4th year in the league. He's had 3 years to show us this. He's shown the touchdown upside with his the big body that he is, standing at 6'4", but he's never shown this consistent wide receiver 1 yardage, high target volume. So I assume he's going to break down. And the kind of thing that ended up being the nail in the coffin for me is I'm not a huge fan of his snap percentage. He's only got he's average about 75% snap percentage, and his targets are slowly falling. His snap percentage is going down. And these were all in very plus matchups where you could exploit the defense through the air. And these were more throw-heavy games for the Chargers. There's a rough patch coming up. So for me, honestly, this guy I would not be too surprised if I'm telling you to sell him now. And then right after week 9, week 10, right around that area, I'm telling you to buy him again.
Sure.
Because he's got an early bye, which can hurt some teams. He's got some rough matchups with Cleveland, Baltimore, his bye, New England, Philly. Not great matchups in there. And then, like I said, I could just see him, if he's getting too much work, ended up hurting you. So for right now, the one downside to selling him is he's not yet a household name, so people might not be willing to buy on him. They might think this is just a flash in the pan. Honestly, I'm using him along with a running back that people do like, and trying to package that to trade up for something, do a 2-for-1, a 2-for-2 kind of situation where you're like, hey, this guy's scoring you points right now. You need this right now. Like for the, A.J. Brown manager, something like that.
Sure. Mike, what about you? Are you going to flip the script here, or are we going to have three on the sell column again?
I'm flipping the script. I'm going to hold, but I'm going to put a caveat on that. I'm going to hold for one more week, and I'm playing with fire here because I'm looking at the Las Vegas Raiders, and I know the back end of this defense is not going to play the way they played, the last couple of weeks. I think that Trayvon Mullins has been playing well, but he's not going to keep it up against Mike Williams. This defense is not going to hold the Chargers offense down. And at the end of the day, I think Mike Williams is going to have another big game. So you can get another game from Mike Williams, but I think you're going to, once he has 4 straight, then you can look at those big name targets for a 1-for-1 swap with Mike Williams. And then as Vitale, you talked about Cleveland, Baltimore, bye week, New England. That is a rough stretch. So as long as you can get a good value for him coming off of Las Vegas, I think that's the play there.
I'm told it is hard to score points on your bye, so.
Yes.
Alrighty, last guy on the list here. This is going to be a kind of strange one, so I'm interested to hear your opinions on this. A guy who was drafted as a sort of, he's going to take him a couple weeks to really come on this season. Saquon Barkley came into the season with injury concerns, and those were reflected in the first couple weeks. Week 2, we saw him have that big 46-yard run, but otherwise not really do much. Now, this past week, he has a halfway decent game. His snap percentage has been rising. He's looking more like he's getting back to being Saquon Barkley. Did briefly come off the field with what, looked like it was a leg injury. He came back in, though. I have him listed here as a sell high. Are you guys on the same boat here? Do you believe that this was just Saquon Barkley got a bad defense? He got the Atlanta Falcons. Did he just capitalize on a bad defense and have a mediocre day that was salvaged by getting in the end zone? Or is this a sign of things to come and you're holding him because hooray Saquon Barkley?
I would love to jump right in on this one.
Sure, Vitale, take us away then.
As you like to say, capitalize on a bad defense. I don't even want to say he did that because 3.19 yards per carry, I don't feel like that's capitalizing. I feel like that's just running the ball.
No, that's a capitalize on the bad defense. I mean, he turned in a 6 for 7 through the air, 43 yards. He hit the end zone. Like he had a fantasy-wise a good day, and he did that because he played against the Falcons.
Yeah, so the Falcons are a joke this year, and he couldn't rush against them. The only one he's been able to rush against was the surprise this year was Washington. We thought they would have the front seven that you wanted to avoid. Apparently, they're just a sieve. Anyone can run against them and just torch them. So the other reason I think he's a massive sell right now, one, huge name, huge. He's like a darling of fantasy players everywhere. Everyone just his rookie year is still just lodged in their brain of how good he was. But up next, he's got New Orleans, Dallas, Rams, and then Carolina. And Carolina has been lights out against the run. Like, nobody can run on them.
They did also just trade for C.J. Henderson, who was a former first-round pick. So,
right.
Cornerback, but like that, their defense is just getting better.
So, with these 4 games coming up next, I just see gloom and doom for this. Not only just him, but the whole Giants as a team. Like, he is not running at an efficiency that I'm liking. He's not getting enough carries that I like to see. This Giants the whole team is becoming banged up, so that's just more focus that you can like. That was the thing we liked with this. They brought in Kenny Golladay. All their weapons were getting healthy, and then it was Ingram was down. Then Kenny G wasn't good to go to start. Now Sterling Shepard's down. Slayton's down. Like, it's just more signs that defenses can just line up in the box and stuff Barkley all day. So I am trying to get off him as hard as possible right now, and even try and play the poor boy when this one's like, I'll give you Saquon Barkley for Swift. Swift's on a terrible team, and I know it's Saquon Barkley, but I gotta try and sell it up that they're the smart one for buying Barkley while he's cheap because you're losing, and just get him off your team. I usually am always averse to getting running backs on bad teams because they can be great, but if the drive stalls out because they need to throw, you could just be having a bad, fantasy day.
Sure. Mike, what about you?
So I'm going to ask you guys a question. And, Saquon Barkley, obviously 51 yards on 16 rushes. But would you put Saquon Barkley in the same category echelon-wise as, say, Leonard Fournette?
Are you talking fantasy-wise or talent-wise?
Talent-wise, fantasy-wise, doesn't matter.
Talent-wise, he's a top 7 running back in the league for me. Fantasy-wise, I would still take him over Leonard Fournette just because at least he's the only game in town, whereas Leonard Fournette is still splitting carries with Gio and Ronald.
Yeah.
So Leonard Fournette split carries and rushed 11 times for 52 yards against the Atlanta Falcons. Saquon Barkley had 1 less yard on 5 more carries. I'm looking to get rid of this guy as fast as humanly possible. Saquon Barkley is one of those guys that he's big name and somebody who is going to overvalue him. You have to find who that is in your league and absolutely capitalize on this 18-point performance.
Frankie? Are you making this one another 3 for 3?
Yeah, I am getting this man off my team for all points mentioned, as my usual first statement goes, because I usually go last. These defenses up ahead are not looking great, and the Giants' offensive line looks terrible.
Sure.
It doesn't help that all their weapons are injured. So, again, like Vitale said, they're going to be able to just stack the box against Saquon, and he's already been inefficient while having weapons on the field. I can't imagine he's going to be better without them on the field.
Yeah.
So I might even take like 70 cents on the dollar to get him off my team for somebody who has, you know, maybe not as much upside.
Like Vitale said, let someone else think they're winning the deal.
Yeah.
All right, I clearly made these too easy because we had three out of the four where you guys agreed on it. So I'm gonna have to dig a little bit deeper in future episodes, try and find some harder targets for you guys to talk through. But that will do it for our buy lows and sell highs in this one. Let's jump into the starts and money picks. Frankie, do you want to lead us off with this? So just run through your four, and then we'll pass it to the next person.
Yeah, sure. I have, if my Google Chrome would load.
You have DJ Moore.
Yes, I do have DJ Moore.
Corey Davis.
The Panthers have looked red hot lately. And obviously being the favorite target there, I think that he's going to have a great day against this Dallas secondary. The Eagles aren't really showing that right now. But, you know, I like DJ Moore. I like Sam Darnold. I think Sam Darnold's a little bit more, I think he's showing us the talent that we all thought he was going to have. And, again, this Panthers defense is playing lights out too. So, I think that they're going to be able to, keep the total not super low, but low enough to where it's kind of like a back and forth.
Sure.
Corey Davis against Tennessee. Obviously, he didn't have the greatest outing against New England, but
he
I
still
think
had the targets though.
Yeah, the Tennessee Titans are, I guess, a shell of their former selves on defense this year. So, I think that combined with what we've seen from Corey Davis to start the year, minus that one game, that's another lock-in for me. My money picks: Jared Goff has looked surprisingly good, and Chicago looks like they're barely a football team anymore. They're kind of, honestly, to me, looking worse than the Jets. 5,200. He only needs to hit 15, 16 points to, return his value. I think he's probably going to get more than that. I think we're looking at, a lot of thrown touchdowns in that game, even to DeAndre Swift. He's looking like he's checking down a lot. Hawk is obviously big bot in the end zone. So that should be easy for him to hit. And a guy that's super cheap, Dawson Knox against Houston, 3,600. He is a guy that I've been looking at a lot because of how cheap he is and the way that they spread that ball around in Buffalo. Anybody can get a touchdown at any time. So I'm taking the cheapest option to open up my my slate to more expensive guys, and he's a guy who can just return value with one play.
I gotta say, I hate the Jared Goff one, if only because that's the lowest total on the slate, and there is not a single player on the Bears that I would trust as a bringback for that one. Like, that's a rough one for GPPs because, there's not a lot. There's not gonna be a lot of scoring in that game. I'll run through my list next. I've got. For my starts, Calvin Ridley versus Washington. Had a disappointing start to the season for the young superstar. I believe that's going to be erased this week against what looks like one of the worst defenses in football through 3 weeks. Calvin Ridley might, you're probably still rolling him out there, but there could be people out there who they drafted Brandon Cooks, they drafted Mike Williams late. They drafted these later round picks who've been performing really well. And maybe they're thinking about starting him over Calvin Ridley, trying to get cute, mess with their lineup and get some of these new guys coming onto the scene instead of him, or I guess just old producers in Brandon Cooks. He's been here forever. Yeah. Don't do that. Everyone scores against Washington. Calvin Ridley is still getting targeted. He's still their number one wide receiver. You got to keep rolling him out there in, especially in bad matchups, and just trust the points are going to come. And then Devonta Smith, who's coming off a bad game again tonight. It gets KC this week. Still encouraging for me because he's at least getting targeted. It just seems like for whatever reason the protection is just collapsing around Jalen Hurts, and he has no time to throw the football. I can't imagine that's going to continue being the case on a week-to-week basis. Smith looks like his number one target. They're just unable to hook up right now due to lack of time for the play to develop. That should change against KC, who hasn't looked particularly strong on defense through the first couple of weeks. And we know KC drives the score up. Philadelphia's going to have to throw to keep up with them. This should be a pace-up game. Plenty of room for Devonta Smith to score points in this one. Money picks are Antonio Gibson against Atlanta. I'm targeting the other side of that Washington game as well because Atlanta also sucks on defense. Antonio Gibson should be able to feast in this matchup. He is still one of the top backs in the league. He's being used more frequently since Ryan Fitzpatrick has gone down. His snap percentage is still right around where you want it to be for a top back. I don't see any reason why he can't eat against this Atlanta defense who, just gave up a halfway decent fantasy day to Saquon Barkley, even though he was inefficient on the ground. And then Rondale Moore at 4,600 versus the Rams. This, I believe, last time I checked, was the highest total on the slate. Rondale Moore is likely going to be a sit candidate for a lot of people because he fumbled early in this past game and then barely saw the field through the rest of that one. But we've seen that before with NFL coaches. They bench their rookies when their rookies put the ball on the ground to put them in timeout, so to speak. Let them know that you can't do that in the NFL. They're going to have to throw in this one. Rondale Moore has still had 2 out of his 3 games so far this season have been great. I expect him to get another healthy usage rate against the Rams in what should be a very pace-up game for both sides on that field. Vitale, what about your 4?
Sure. Just to get through my stars, I think they're pretty simple.
Sure.
I've got Logan Thomas against Atlanta. Atlanta sucks. Logan Thomas seems to feast a little bit more on this Washington offense when they're going against bad teams like they did when he was used more heavily against the Giants. People might be looking down on him because he just fumbled in this past game, but he still saw a good target volume for a tight end, and he's one of the few guys in the league that I trust to get some quality targets and put up yards. The other one, Cole Beasley, going back to the well, versus Houston. He gets insane target volume for a guy who is barely getting looked at. I mean, if you're in a half-point or PPR format, there's no reason he shouldn't be like a flex or wide receiver 3 for you because he can just easily haul in 7-8 balls, and that will basically pay for his day, plus the yardage. And like I said, as Frankie was talking about Dawson Knox, really anyone on this offense can get a touchdown. I mean, if you're the Diggs manager, you're hoping it's Diggs, but so far it hasn't been. To my monies, I'm going bold. I'm going all in on some of the most expensive running backs this week. Derrick Henry, $8,800.
He is the most expensive running back this week.
Going against the Jets. The Jets are terrible. But the upside here is that the defense for the Titans is exploitable. So I think that there is at least a chance that the Jets should be able to sling it to keep this game at least going. And with the turnover percentage that we've been seeing coming out of this Jets team, I could see a lot of short yardage field for Derrick Henry to just punch in short yardage touchdowns all day or just work this defense as much as he wants. I have no fears that Derrick Henry shouldn't be able to put up like 100-plus yards and maybe 1 or 2 touchdowns. Like him tripling is going to take a lot, but then again, he touches the ball so much.
I think I like him more if there's no A.J. Brown this week.
Yeah, that's another thing too. Yeah. And then I've got Chubb going against the Rams here. Like I said, they are depleted at the wide receiver position. Odell Beckham looks solid coming on his way back, but he's still working his way back into the system. Their tight ends are kind of getting all peppered all over the place, and it seems like this offense is running through their running backs. We just saw a big game for Kareem, and Chubb still got 22 carries, 84 yards, which is okay, but it's not what you're looking for with a lead back like this. I could easily see him in a pace-up game like this, really helping their offense take over and actually seeing some receptions come his way because they're going to need to utilize him in multiple different ways if they're going to stay in it against the Rams. And just on top of that, their defense has looked pretty solid, so I think they could get some turnovers and put them in short yardage positions here to really help, just like Henry, help him punch in some goal line.
Sure. Mike, what about your 4?
All right, so I'm starting off with Brandon Ayuk here going against the Seattle Seahawks. And the Seahawks are obviously one of the worst defenses in the NFL. And you're taking a look at, obviously, Ayuk has been, a bit of a struggle early on in the season, but he saw a decent uptick this week. And taking a look at those numbers, obviously he caught 4 of 6 targets for 37 yards, and that touchdown helps him, obviously. But I think he's going to continue to see more. And with the Seattle Seahawks giving away cornerbacks to other teams like it's Halloween candy. Essentially, there's nobody on the back end that I trust to be able to cover Deebo Samuel, let alone Brandon Ayuk. And I think Kyle Shanahan is tired of all the questions of what's wrong with Ayuk. Why isn't he going? So he's going to hyper target Ayuk over the next couple of weeks to show exactly that why this guy is who he is, and he's going to be a focal point in this offense. So I like the Ayuk start here. I think he's going to be somebody that you can rely on. He was drafted as somebody you guys can rely on. And I like him for that as well.
His snap percentage did go up to like 86% this week.
I do love the idea of people bullying and Ayuk back into relevance. Just bullying Shanahan to get him used.
Next up, I have Cordarrelle Patterson, which is an interesting one. It's kind of a deep grab for me, but I like Cordarrelle Patterson a lot. And he, while he's not obviously the main running back for the Falcons need to do anything that they can do right. And Cordarrelle Patterson coming out of the backfield has shown a great tendency to have some sort of connection with Matt Ryan. As you guys know, I was down in Tampa when I saw the Falcons play the Buccaneers, and he really does work very well in the backfield with Matt Ryan. They were on the same page more times than not, and he was picking up blitzes as well. So I like Cordarrelle Patterson. I think he's going to get more opportunities to run the ball, but the receiving upside is there significantly. So I like what Cordarrelle Patterson can bring, especially against a Washington football team that is near last when it comes to passing yards given up per game. And then my money starts are going to start off with Chris Carson. I'm a huge Chris Carson fan, have been for years now. And this guy has obviously taken over as the RB1, and there's nobody even close to him in Seattle. I think that Pete Carroll finally learned that running the ball can help you win a game. And the Seattle Seahawks are doing just that. They're offsetting Russell Wilson and running the ball. Now with the Tyler Lockett injury, I think they're going to rely on the run even more. Chris Carson at $6,300, he's still on the expensive side, but he's going to get the workload, and he has the receiving upside that you look for. I like Chris Carson here. And then on the opposite side, I have Corey Davis. Corey Davis being one of those guys that, he had a great week 1, then weeks 2 and 3 just almost disappeared. But you can't help it going against defenses in New England and Denver. Now he's going up against Tennessee, and Tennessee is arguably one of the worst defenses in the NFL. They're starting a lot of young guys. They're starting a lot of unproven guys. And when you have Corey Davis going up against this team, I think you can expect a lot of yardage, a lot of things to happen. And Zach Wilson has some sort of favoritism, I would say, for Corey Davis. He hyper targets Corey Davis, and he obviously he had 10 targets against the Denver Broncos. He only hauled in 5 of them, but still being looked at on almost every single drop back when he's not being rushed, of course. So I like Corey Davis a lot. I think he's going to be a good value guy for starts. But those are my guys.
Okay.
I like it.
And then, as always, we round out this show talking about the top waiver ads of the week. So I'll take you guys through the list right now. If you want to, talk about any of these guys in depth, feel free to stop me. Top waiver ad this week is, of course, Chuba Hubbard of the Carolina Panthers. He's going to be getting a couple weeks worth of action while Christian McCaffrey is on the mend. He is currently 11.3% rostered, so he's out there in most leagues. We have him pegged at about 20% of your fab, 25% of your fab is what you should be looking to spend to go after him. Obviously, if your team is really in need of running backs, maybe you had Christian McCaffrey, Raheem Mostert, you might have to adjust your strategy here. But generally, 20 to 25% is what we're projecting to be spent on him. Alexander Madison, another name here where Dalvin Cook is dealing with some injuries. Stop me if you've heard that before. Madison looked great this past week. Cook, we don't know if he's going to miss more time than just the 1 week or if it's right back to the gridiron for him. But if Cook re-aggravates that, Madison's going to be an important guy to have. He is 40.7% roster right now, so the chance he's already picked up in your league. But if he's not, you need to consider throwing some fab at him, getting him on your bench, because he is clearly one of the league's top 3 handcuffs still.
Yeah.
And then Peyton Barber to round out the running back list, 7.3% roster. Josh Jacobs is obviously still just hoping to get back to practice, never mind on the field. Peyton Barber this week had 23 carries for 111 yards, was worked into the passing game. I don't think that's going to be an every week thing because we know what Peyton Barber is, but if he's going to get that kind of work, he needs to be on your roster. I'd probably target him over Alexander Madison because he's currently getting work. But he is definitely someone who you can go out there and grab, and you probably don't have to spend as much fab for him as you do other guys, given that his name is Peyton Barber and everyone already knows, who he is and what he brings to the table.
Yep.
Wide receiver room, we've got Christian Kirk of the Arizona Cardinals at 22.7%. He just week in, week out looks like he is, sort of the 1B on that roster, sometimes 1C, but, because really the 1B is shared between him and Rondale Moore. But he is getting consistent volume in an offense that regularly pushes the pace and throws a ton. He's going to have some down weeks. He's Christian Kirk. But he is someone who you can rely on as a wide receiver 3/flex to give you some, good performances off the bench and sort of give you at least a safe floor for your team. Yeah. Emmanuel Sanders, the Buffalo Bills. You guys talked about this when you were talking about all of these Bills players and the starts and money picks. You can kind of add anyone from the Bills. The Bills are a team that can play at a very high pace. They can score points very quickly. You want to have people who are catching passes from Josh Allen. Emmanuel Sanders fits the bill, and he is only 23.2% rostered. And then Tim Patrick of the Denver Broncos, 14% rostered currently. That KJ Hamler injury is likely going to help him more than anyone else on this team, at least until Jerry Jeudy comes back. He doesn't have long-term value for me, but at least for the next 4 to 5 weeks, I think Tim Patrick is someone you can roll out there as a wide receiver 3/flex option and you get semi-consistent points from him, in the 6 to 11 range in half-point leagues. Mm-hmm. And then finally, for streaming quarterbacks, we've kind of been talking about a lot of the same guys this season because there hasn't been a lot of surprise streamers. But Derek Carr and Kirk Cousins are popping up as the top streamers again this week. Derek Carr is 49.2% rostered. Kirk Cousins is 32.3% rostered. I'd throw Jared Cook onto that list too, even though we don't really love the matchup for tournament games. In cash games, he's going to get you probably a good 16, 17 point floor, which is really all you need.
Jared Goff, I mean.
Yes, Jared Goff. That's what. Yeah, Jared Cook.
Yeah, Jared Cook's tight end.
I mean, Jared Cook should also be rostered, but
yeah, he should be rostered. Tight end's a wasteland.
He is tight end as a wasteland, and he is regularly doing good in another pass-heavy offense. But yes, Jared Goff is someone who should be likely added if you need a quarterback streamer. And then we have our 3 defensive streamers of the week. We have the Bengals versus Jacksonville on Thursday night. Jacksonville's coming to Cincinnati in a honestly not bad total, 45.5 point total in this one. Bengals are 5% rostered. Trevor Lawrence turns the ball over like it's his job. Still waiting for that generational quarterback part to kick in. Add the Bengals. We like home defenses against bad offenses.
Yep.
The Lions are traveling to Chicago. They are 14.1% rostered. The Lions' defense hasn't looked particularly good to this point in the season. People can score against them. Fortunately, the Bears basically don't have an offense. So this is still going to be a situation where the Lions can go out there and take advantage of either Justin Fields, who looks like he is just being asked to go out there and call the game himself, or Nick Foles, who is a perennial backup, or Andy Dalton, who's going to be coming in banged up. I don't think that this is going to be a game where you have to worry about the ball not getting turned over. And then finally, Packers versus Pittsburgh, 35% rostered. The Packers defense has looked fairly good to date. Their corners are playing real well, and Big Ben looks like he is struggling with the whole standing on 2 feet thing as well as the accuracy thing. I don't expect anything great out of this Pittsburgh offense. They're going to be chasing all game. They're going to have to throw to keep up, and that means that Jair Alexander and friends are going to be having many chances to pick off aging Big Ben. This is one where you could easily see this game end up with 2-3 picks, and if any of those go to the house, you're making out like a bandit.
Yeah.
So add those 3 for streaming defenses. And as always, if you have any questions, start sits, or anything, trade questions, anything like that, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter. You'll be able to find all that info down in the bio. And join us later this week for the countdown shows. Adios.